Yes, as I read from this transcript, I'd love all of us to be a partaker in what we are listening to and share it with someone else. Do people still care about human rights? At a time of great distress caused by the coronavirus pandemic and other unprecedented global challenges, people are looking to human rights as a drive for hope, says United Nations Special Advisor Fabrizio Hochschild. Fabrizio Hochschild, Special Advisor to the UN General Secretary on the commemoration of the UN's 75th anniversary. 75 years ago, the UN was created to advance global peace and security, improve access to development, and further respect for human rights. As people emerged from two world wars, as the full horrors of the Holocaust were exposed, as the shadow of the World War began to descend, and as those living under the yoke of colonialism, nearly one-third of the world population then fought to be free. Respect for human rights was a global rallying cry. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted on the 10th of December 1948, inspired people across the world and laid the foundation for governments and institutional reform, for progressive, people-centered legislation and education that reverberates from generation to generation. The UN had 75. What different? What's the same? The 26th of May 2020 is there hope for the United Nations in its 75th year? And look at what people think of the organization and whether it needs change. But for several years now, in some part of the world, respect for human rights has declined. The United Nations General Secretary General and High Commissioner of Human Rights is warned for a backslash, both at the country's level and in discussion at the United Nations, notably in the fight against terrorism, with regards to women's rights and in space for civil society participation and activism. The United Nations independent rights experts have raised the alarm over the steep increase in attack, including murder, on the human rights defenders, from environmental defenders to journalism. The COVID-19 pandemic had laid bare deepened poverty, rising inequality, structural and entrance discrimination, and other widening gap in the protection of social and economic rights. As the popularity of human rights fade, in 2020, to mark its 75th anniversary, the United Nations set out to listen to the people it served. It launched a global consultation to understand the people's hope and fears in the future, and to seek to better understand expectation of international cooperation and of UN in particular. About 1.5 million people participate in our consultation directly through severe dialogues in all UN members and observed states. Many more did so through our partners on the ground, from large youth development to business people and indigenous group. We also asked Edelman Intelligence and the Pew Research Center to carry out independent representative polling of 50,000 people in 50 countries to serve as a reality check and ensure we are not just hearing from those sympathetic to us. In the midst of a pandemic, with poverty on the rise, conflicts unresolved, and climate change unchecked, We were uncertain as to whether further respect for human rights would feature at all, let alone as a priority for the global public, but it did. Of the issues cited as priorities for recovering from the pandemic, all have human rights at their core, from securing better access to basic services to improving how we address inequality. Meanwhile, the most common proposal for solution centered on increasing people's participation in discussion that affect their lives and on increasing the inclusion of vulnerable and marginalized groups. In the longer term, next to combating climate change and environment destruction, response main priorities all reflect an aspiration for even more universal respect for human rights. A call for universal respect for human rights and human dignity unified humanity after the Second World War. And it does so gain another point of great distress and unprecedented global challenges. People look to human rights as a driver for hope and just measure for devices action to realize the future we want. We need to heed the call. This is a transcript that was sent on one of the Swiss info page here in Switzerland, and I'm just reading from it. My views, my question is this: what do you think of human rights? And how do you think you can implement, or the UN or the Human Rights Society can implement more human rights in our local countries where we live? And what do you think the human rights should be doing when we think about the crime rate in our various islands and countries? And is the UN everywhere? Can you feel the presence of them in your country through your officials that resides in your country? Let me your views on this. This is not my views. I'm just reading from an article. And we need to hear more about law and orders and society environment. Let me your views on this. Share this so others can also be a part of this. Your views does matter. Your vote likewise does matter. Lend us your views and let's see what we can do in our society so that human rights can be valid. Indiscrimination. There's so many things. Murders, poverty, living below the means of society. Share this, my friends. Once again, this is JCon TV out of Zurich, saying unto each and every one of us, in this time of COVID-19, sneeze in your elbows, wash your hands, wear the mask, and do your distancing. And walk in peace, my friend. Shalom.